She was 5 months pregnant, bald from chemotherapy, and sitting in a wheelchair on a stage she never wanted to be on. 300 people in designer gowns stared at her like she was a sideshow. Her ex-husband stood 20 feet away in a $12,000 tuxedo smiling because he thought he had already won. He thought she would sing something sweet, something that would make him look generous for inviting his dying ex-wife to his wedding. But here is what he did not know. He did not know that the woman he threw away had spent 5 weeks writing the truth in 3 notebooks. He did not know that the clause he buried in their divorce papers to control her was about to become the biggest mistake of his life. And he definitely did not know that his brand new bride was listening to every single word. What happened in the next 4 minutes did not just end his wedding. It ended everything he had ever built. And it began everything she had been too afraid to become. This is the story of Ruth Mitchell. And if you have ever been underestimated, overlooked, or thrown away by someone who forgot what you sacrificed for them, this story is for you. Lesson and value. This story is not just about betrayal and revenge. It is about what happens when a woman with nothing left to lose discovers that her voice is the most powerful thing she has ever owned. It is a reminder that the people who build you up in silence are the ones who matter, and the ones who take credit for your work will always be exposed by the truth. If you are going through something hard right now, let Ruth's story remind you of one thing: you are still here. And that means the story is not over. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment and tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Was it the song, the bride walking away, or the moment his daughter did not recognize him? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that giving up is not an option. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this one. We bring you real stories with real lessons every single week. Welcome to the family. The last time I held a microphone, I was 5 months pregnant, bald from chemotherapy, and sitting in a wheelchair at my ex-husband's wedding. 300 people were staring at me, some with pity, some with disgust, most with the kind of curiosity that people reserve for car wrecks and circus acts. The kind of looking where nobody wants to admit they are looking, but nobody can turn away. My ex-husband stood 20 feet away in a $12,000 tuxedo, his arm around his new bride, smiling at me the way you smile at a dog that performs a trick on command. That particular smile, the one that says, "I own you," and we both know it. He did not invite me to his wedding. He forced me. There was a clause buried in our divorce papers, his lawyer's idea, a leash he could yank whenever he wanted, that said I had to cooperate with reasonable personal requests for 2 years after the divorce, or lose the only child support my baby would ever see. So there I was, his dying, pregnant ex-wife, his spectacle, his proof to 300 of his closest friends and business associates that he had won and I had lost. He thought I was going to sing something sweet, something soft and forgiving that would make him look generous for letting his sick ex-wife perform at his beautiful wedding. He thought I would sit in that wheelchair and give him one final gift, the way I had given him every gift for 12 years. My money, my health, my youth, my grandmother's jewelry, my dignity, everything. He thought that's wrong. What I sang that day did not just ruin his wedding. It burned his entire life to the ground, and it saved mine. But to understand how I ended up on that stage, you need to understand what happened in a kitchen 12 years earlier, the night I sold my soul for a man who would one day try to bury me alive, 12 years earlier. Ruth Mitchell was 29 years old. She was not glamorous. She was not wealthy. She was not the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. She turned heads when she opened her mouth, but only at Grace Community Church on Sunday mornings, where she sang alto in the choir. Not as soloist. Never as soloist. Ruth was a background person, the foundation nobody noticed until it cracked. She worked 2 jobs, morning shift as a home care aide at Sunrise Senior Living, bathing elderly patients and spoon-feeding oatmeal to people who had forgotten their own names. Evening shift supervising the cafeteria at Westfield Elementary, where she knew every kid by name and always snuck extra pudding cups to the ones who looked hungry. The ones with the 2 big clothes and the 2 quiet voices. She saw herself in those children, and she could not help herself. She drove a 2006 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and 180,000 miles on it. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Millbrook. Working class. Clean. The kind of place where you could hear your neighbor's television through the wall and smell fabric softener in your sleep. The rent was $850 a month, and every month, Ruth paid it on time, and every month, there was almost nothing left. Ruth's only valuable possession was a gold necklace with a small pearl pendant. Her grandmother, Margaret, had worn it every day for 60 years. When Margaret died, she left it to Ruth with a note that said, "Not worth much money, baby, but it carried me through. Let it carry you too." Ruth wore that necklace against her skin every single day. It was the only inheritance she had. It was the only thing she owned that could not be replaced. That is the woman Jason Reed met at a church potluck dinner on a Wednesday night in October. And that is the woman Jason Reed would spend 12 years slowly destroying. Jason Reed was 27. Tall, sharp-jawed, the kind of blue eyes that made women trust him and men want to follow him. He showed up at Grace Community Church not for God, but for the free food. He was sleeping on his cousin Darren's couch in the Oakdale Apartments across town. He had dropped out of community college because he could not afford textbooks. Every bank in the city had rejected his loan applications. He had a stack of handwritten business plans that nobody would read, and a dream so big it had swallowed every other part of his personality. But Jason had something more dangerous than poverty. He had ambition without limits and conscience without depth. He did not just want money. He wanted people to watch him have money. He wanted the suits and the cars and the magazine covers. He wanted rooms that went quiet when he entered. He wanted power, not to do anything meaningful with it, but to wear it like armor so that nobody could ever look at him the way people had looked at him his whole life, like he was less than, like he was nothing. Ruth served him mashed potatoes that night. She noticed his hands were shaking from hunger. She gave him extra without being asked, 2 big scoops instead of 1, and she smiled at him, and she did not make him feel small for needing it. "Thank you," he said, looking up at her. "You have no idea how much I needed this." He was not talking about the food. He had found what every predator instinctively looks for. Someone who gives without counting. Someone who sees need and cannot walk past it. Someone whose kindness is so deep and so automatic that it never occurs to them to wonder if they are being used. They started meeting for coffee. Ruth always paid. Jason always promised to pay her back. They sat in her tiny kitchen while he spread his business plans across her table and talked about the real estate empire he was going to build. He talked with his hands and his whole body, leaning forward, eyes bright, painting pictures in the air of buildings he had not built and deals he had not closed, and a future that glittered like something out of a movie, Ruth listened. Ruth believed. Ruth decided this man was worth saving. She was right that he was talented. She was right that he was driven. She was wrong about everything else. What Ruth gave Jason Reed over the next 5 years could fill a ledger book. But it would never fit on a balance sheet, because the most valuable things she gave him were the things that had no price tag. She sold her grandmother's pearl necklace and earrings, the only inheritance she had, the only thing she owned that mattered, for $2,400 at a pawn shop on Roosevelt Avenue. She cried in the bathroom afterward for 20 minutes, sitting on the floor of a gas station restroom with her fist pressed against her mouth so nobody would hear. Then she walked out, handed Jason the cash for his business license, and never mentioned the crying again. Not once. Not ever. She co-signed a $15,000 business loan. If he defaulted, she would lose everything. She signed it anyway because he held her face between his hands and said, "Baby, I will never let you down." And she believed him because she needed to believe someone. She took on a third job, weekend cleaning at a medical office building, working 7 days a week, 51 weeks a year, so Jason could quit his warehouse job and focus on his company full time. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and she did not stop moving until 10 o'clock at night. And she did this for years, and she never complained, because she thought they were building something together. She skipped meals. She wore the same 4 outfits for 2 years. She went to the dentist 0 times in 3 years, because the copay was $40 that Jason needed for investor meetings. She developed a toothache that she treated with over-the-counter painkillers and prayer. And every morning, before Jason left the apartment, Ruth prayed over him. She stood in their tiny kitchen, with her hands on his shoulders, and she asked God to protect him, to guide him, to open doors for him that no man could open on his own. And when he came home defeated, rejected again, mocked again, ignored again, she sat with him at the kitchen table, and she sang. Soft gospel songs her grandmother had taught her, songs about trouble not lasting always, songs about holding on, songs that kept him alive when he wanted to quit. And Jason would hold her face and say, "Baby, when we make it, and we will, the whole world is going to know your name. Everything I build, we build together. I swear on my life." They married at Grace Community Church on a Saturday afternoon in June. No bridesmaids, no groomsmen. Ruth in a white sundress she had found at a thrift store for $14. Jason in the one good suit her money had bought. Gloria Jackson, Ruth's best friend from the choir, 58 years old, retired school nurse, with a spine of steel wrapped in warm honey, stood as witness. That night, lying in their bed in that one-bedroom apartment above the laundromat, Jason whispered, "You are the only person who ever believed in me. I will never forget that." He was already forgetting. Now, present day, 12 years later. Ruth Mitchell, Reed was 41 years old, 5 months pregnant, and sitting in an oncologist's office, being told she was dying. The office was cold the way all medical offices are cold, with that particular antiseptic smell and fluorescent light that makes everything look slightly unreal. Dr. Sarah Whitfield, an oncologist at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, sat across from Ruth with a file open on her desk and the careful expression of someone who has delivered this news too many times but has never learned how to make it hurt less. "Mrs. Reed, your blood work shows extremely elevated CA 125 markers. The imaging confirms masses on both ovaries with involvement of the pelvic lymph nodes. I am seeing what appears to be early-stage metastasis." Ruth heard the words the way you hear words in a dream. They were there, but they did not connect to anything real. "This is advanced ovarian cancer," Dr. Whitfield continued. "Stage 3, possibly stage 4 pending further scans. Ruth's hand went to her belly. 5 months of baby growing inside her, while cancer was growing alongside it. Two things alive in her body at the same time. One she wanted more than anything, one that wanted to kill her. "But I am pregnant," Ruth said. "I know. And that changes everything about how we approach this. The options, doctor." Whitfield laid out were brutal in their simplicity. Option 1, modified chemotherapy. Less toxic, safer for the baby, but far less effective against aggressive cancer. It would slow the disease, but not stop it. The full treatment protocol would have to wait until after delivery, which was 4 months away. In 4 months, the cancer could spread to places where no treatment on Earth could reach it. Option 2, terminate the pregnancy and pursue the most aggressive treatment available immediately. Maximum chance of survival for Ruth. 0 chance of survival for the baby. No. Ruth's voice was immediate, not loud, not dramatic, just certain the way a person is certain about gravity or sunrise. "I am not ending this pregnancy. Ruth, I need you to understand what that means. The modified protocol will slow the cancer, but it will not stop it. We would need to wait until after delivery to start the full treatment. That is 4 more months. In 4 months, this cancer could..." "I understand, and the answer is still no. This baby is the only good thing left in my life. I will fight the cancer with whatever you can give me that will not hurt my child. And the rest waits until she is born." She said even though she did not know yet, she just knew. Ruth made that choice sitting alone in a doctor's office. Alone because Jason, her husband, the father of this child, the man whose empire she had built with her bare hands, did not answer her calls. She called him 4 times while sitting in that waiting room. 4 times his phone rang and went to voicemail. The 4th time, she did not leave a message. She just held the phone against her ear and listened to the silence and understood something she had been refusing to understand for years. She found out later where he was. Instagram told her. Photos of Jason in a custom tuxedo at a charity gala, his arm around a woman Ruth did not recognize. A woman who was young and beautiful and laughing at something Jason had said. Smiling, sparkling, living the life that Ruth's sacrifices had purchased. Here is what happened to Jason Reed in 12 years, told not as a success story, but as a disappearing act. Not Jason disappearing. Ruth disappearing, vanishing inch by inch from her own marriage, while Jason built himself into someone who did not need her anymore. Year 5. Jason's first development project succeeded. A major investor named Gerald Thornton saw something in Jason's plans and bet big on him. Money started flowing. Not a river yet, but a steady stream. Jason bought a new suit, then 10 new suits, then a watch that cost more than Ruth's car. Ruth was proud. She ironed every one of those suits and hung them in the closet and ran her hand along the fabric and thought, "We did it." Year 6. Jason stopped coming home for dinner. "Business meetings," he said. "Networking. You have to understand, Ruth, this is how deals get made." Ruth understood. She ate alone at the kitchen table every night and kept a plate warm for him in the oven until midnight, then wrapped it in plastic and put it in the refrigerator. Most mornings, the plate was still there, untouched. Year 7. Jason removed their wedding photo from his office. Ruth noticed because she had come to bring him lunch, the way she did every Wednesday, and the frame was gone from his desk. In its place was a Frame Forbes article with a headline that read, "The Self-Made Mogul Who Bet Everything on Himself, Self-Made," as if Ruth's hands had not built the foundation he stood on, as if her grandmother's necklace had not paid for his first business license, as if her 3 jobs and skipped meals and unpaid dental bills were not the invisible bricks beneath everything he had become. Year 8. Jason started criticizing Ruth's appearance. Can you do something with your hair? Maybe you should join a gym? That dress makes you look. He never finished the sentences. He did not have to. Ruth heard the endings anyway. Makes you look old. Makes you look poor. Makes you look like someone I am embarrassed to be seen with. Year 9. Jason moved into the guest bedroom. I come home late, he said. Do not want to wake you. He said it like a kindness. It was an eviction. Year 10. Ruth found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A $400 dinner at a restaurant she had never been to. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of champagne. She held the receipt in her hand for a long time, standing in the laundry room, and she did not ask him about it. She was afraid of the answer. She was afraid that if she asked, and he confirmed what she already knew, she would have to do something about it, and she did not have the strength to do anything about it. So she put the receipt back in his pocket and washed the jacket and hung it up and said nothing. Year 11. Jason stopped touching her entirely. Not just intimately. He would not hold her hand, would not brush her shoulder as he passed, would not make any physical contact at all, as if she had become contagious, as if whatever she was could spread to him and damage the pristine image he had constructed. Ruth became a ghost in her own marriage. She moved through the house and left no impression. She spoke and was not heard. She existed and was not seen. Year 12. Ruth discovered she was pregnant and discovered she had cancer in the same month. The night she told Jason about the pregnancy, before the diagnosis, when she still thought this baby might save them, she bought tiny yellow shoes and made his favorite dinner. Pot roast with the garlic mashed potatoes he loved and the green beans cooked the way his mother used to make them. She set the table with candles. She put the yellow shoes in a small white box with a ribbon. He came home at 10:47 that night, smelling like perfume that was not hers. She was sitting at the table. The candles had burned down to stubs. The pot roast was cold. He opened the box, saw the shoes, and for 1/2 second, one fraction of a moment that Ruth would replay in her mind 10,000 times over the next year, his eyes lit up. Something real flickered across his face. Joy, hope, tenderness. The ghost of the man he used to be, the man who used to hold her face and make promises in their tiny kitchen above the laundromat. Then it died. She watched him kill it, deliberately, like snuffing a candle with his fingers. This is not a good time, Ruth. I have 3 developments closing this quarter. He did not touch the shoes. He did not touch the pot roast. He went to the guest bedroom and closed the door. That half-second haunted Ruth more than any cruelty he ever showed her. Because cruelty from a monster is expected. You can brace for it. You can build walls against it. But cruelty from someone who chose to be a monster, someone who felt the right thing and deliberately turned away from it. That is the kind of wound that never heals. That is the wound that whispers to you at 3 in the morning. He could have loved you. He just decided not to. 5 months pregnant, bald from modified chemotherapy, 25 pounds underweight except for the belly, a skeletal woman with a round pregnant stomach, life and death sharing the same body. Confined to a wheelchair most days because the chemo stole her balance and her strength and her ability to trust her own legs. Jason walked into her hospital room on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a manila envelope. He stood near the door. He always stood near the door now, as if closeness to Ruth might contaminate him. Ruth, I think we both know this is not working. What is not working? Our marriage. Or having a wife who is sick. I cannot do this anymore. I need a partner who can stand beside me. Not someone I have to manage. Manage. I am carrying your child, Jason. I am fighting cancer to keep your child alive. You are not up to my standard anymore. He said it cold, clinical, rehearsed. The way a man says something he has been practicing in front of a mirror. I have built something extraordinary. I need someone who matches that. I built that something extraordinary. I sold my grandmother's jewelry. I worked 3 jobs. I starved myself so you could. Nobody asked you to do that. 6 words. The cruelest 6 words Ruth had ever heard, because they erased 12 years of sacrifice with the efficiency of a delete key. 12 years of skipped meals and aching teeth and 3 jobs and prayers over his shoulders and songs in the kitchen when he wanted to quit. Nobody asked you to do that. As if love needs to be asked. As if sacrifice requires an invitation. The divorce papers were designed by Jason's lawyer, Mitchell Cross, the most aggressive family law attorney in the city. A man who had built his reputation on leaving the opposing party with as little as legally possible. The settlement offered Ruth $35,000 in a lump sum. No alimony, no share of the $40 million company her sacrifices had built from nothing. $35,000 for 12 years of her life, less than $3,000 per year, less than the cost of one of Jason's suits. But there was one clause Ruth did not fully understand when she signed. Buried on page 14, in language specifically designed to confuse anyone reading it without legal representation, was a provision that read, "The respondent agrees to cooperate with reasonable personal requests made by the petitioner for a period of 24 months following the dissolution of the marriage. Failure to comply may result in modification or termination of child support obligations as outlined in Section 12, subsection B." Ruth's eyes were blurring with tears and exhaustion and the fog of chemotherapy. The legal language swam on the page like fish in murky water. She did not have a lawyer. She could not afford one. She had called 3 legal aid offices and been told there was a 6-week waiting list. She did not have 6 weeks. She barely had 6 hours of energy a day. She asked Jason what the clause meant. "It is nothing," he said. "Standard language. Just says we will be civil with each other." It was not nothing. It was a leash. A legal mechanism that would allow Jason to force Ruth to do virtually anything he defined as reasonable for 2 years, or she would lose the child support that would be her baby's only lifeline. Ruth signed, 5 months pregnant, bald, alone, in a wheelchair, with an IV drip pumping modified chemotherapy into her veins to fight the cancer while protecting the baby that her husband did not want. Jason took the papers and left without touching her, without looking at the ultrasound photo taped to the wall beside her bed, without saying goodbye. Gloria found Ruth 20 minutes later, collapsed in the wheelchair, hyperventilating so badly that the nurses had to intervene because the stress was threatening premature labor. Gloria held Ruth's face between her hands and said, "Breathe, baby. Breathe just like you taught me." And she sang, very softly, until Ruth's breathing slowed and the monitors stopped screaming. Ruth moved back to Millbrook, back where she started. The same neighborhood, a different apartment, 2nd floor walk-up, no elevator, hallways that smelled like old cooking and bleach. Gloria's nephew, Marcus, 26, built like a linebacker with the gentlest hands in the world, carried Ruth up the stairs in his arms like she weighed nothing. Gloria followed with the wheelchair, bumping it up 1 step at a time, cursing under her breath with every bump. The apartment was small, 2 rooms and a kitchen and a bathroom with a shower that took 4 minutes to produce hot water. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbor's television. The window in the bedroom looked out onto an alley where someone had planted sunflowers in a cracked pot, and Ruth stared at those sunflowers every morning and thought about how things can grow in broken places if they are stubborn enough. The math of Ruth's survival was simple and devastating. $35,000 in the bank. Rent, $1,100 a month. Cobra health insurance since she lost coverage through Jason's company, $2,100 a month. Medical co-pays, prenatal care, medications, approximately $800 a month. Food, utilities, baby supplies, $600 a month. Total monthly burn, $4,600. At that rate, Ruth would be broke in 7.5 months. The baby was due in 4 months. The aggressive cancer treatment, which could not start until after delivery, would cost at least $85,000, even with charity care assistance. Ruth had enough money to survive the pregnancy or fight the cancer. Not both. She sat at her kitchen table with a calculator and a legal pad and ran the numbers 7 times, as if maybe on the 8th attempt the math would be different. It was never different. Dr. Whitfield went far beyond her medical duties. She enrolled Ruth in every assistance program available, navigating the Byzantine labyrinth of hospital charity care applications and pharmaceutical patient assistance programs and state medical aid with the ferocity of a woman on a mission. She found reduced-rate prescription plans. She called in favors at the hospital to reduce Ruth's delivery costs. But the numbers did not add up. They never added up. Gloria Jackson was Ruth's lifeline, not a safety net, because a safety net implies something passive, something that just catches you when you fall. Gloria was active. Gloria was relentless. She came every single day, driving her 15-year-old Toyota across town with the check engine light on, carrying bags of groceries and clean towels, and the kind of love that does not ask permission or keep score. She drove Ruth to chemo appointments and held the bucket when Ruth vomited in the parking lot afterward because the nausea hit before they could get back to the car. She cooked meals Ruth could barely eat, soft foods that would not irritate the sores the chemo left in Ruth's mouth. She cleaned the apartment, did the laundry, managed the medications, lining them up on the kitchen counter in neat rows. With labels she had written in her careful school teacher handwriting, so Ruth would not mix them up on the days when the brain fog was so thick she could not remember what year it was. But Gloria was 58 years old with a fixed retirement income and a body that was starting to protest. She had arthritis in both knees that made the stairs to Ruth's apartment a daily exercise in controlled pain. She had not slept more than 5 hours a night in weeks. She was running herself into the ground, and she knew it, and she did not care, and that was the problem. One night, Ruth could not sleep. The pain was bad, a deep gnawing ache in her bones that the medication could not touch. The kind of pain that lives underneath everything and makes the whole world feel hostile. She wheeled herself toward the kitchen to get water, moving slowly in the dark, and through the thin wall, she heard something that cracked her heart open in a new way. Gloria was crying. Not the gentle, controlled kind of crying that Gloria showed the world, not the dignified dabbing of eyes and straightening of shoulders that Gloria performed whenever things got hard. This was raw, deep, gasping sobs from a woman who had reached the end of what she could carry. Gloria was sitting at the kitchen table, in the dark, her head in her hands, and she was whispering through her tears, "Lord, I cannot do this. I cannot watch another person I love die. I buried Raymond. I cannot bury Ruth, too. I am not strong enough. I am not." Raymond, Gloria's husband, dead from lung cancer 10 years ago. Gloria had nursed him through 18 months of treatment, watching him dissolve from the big, laughing man who used to dance with her in the kitchen to a shadow in a hospital bed, who did not recognize her face at the end. She had held his hand when he died, and she had never fully recovered, and now she was doing it again. Ruth did not announce herself. She just wheeled into the kitchen, reached out in the dark, and took Gloria's hand. Gloria startled, wiped her face with her sleeve. "Baby, what are you doing up? You need to rest." "Hush," Ruth said, the same word Gloria always used on her. And then Ruth did something she had not done in months. She sang, softly, because her voice was thin from chemo and rough from the sores in her throat, but steady, an old gospel song, the one her grandmother used to hum while sewing. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Gloria broke down completely, her whole body shaking. And for 10 minutes, in a dark kitchen in a cheap apartment in Millbrook, the two women reversed roles. The dying woman comforted the healthy one. The patient became the healer. The one who had nothing held up the one who was giving everything. When the song ended, Gloria whispered, "Don't you dare die on me, Ruth Mitchell. I am working on it," Ruth said. And for the first time in weeks, she almost smiled. Maybe you have been there. Maybe you have had that moment when you realize the person taking care of you is breaking too. When you see that the cost of loving you is destroying someone and you cannot stop needing them, and they cannot stop giving, and there is no way out that does not hurt someone. If you have been there, you know that it is the loneliest feeling in the world, because you cannot carry them and they cannot carry you, and all you can do is hold hands in the dark and hope the morning comes. 4 months later, Ruth's due date. The modified chemo had held the cancer at bay, barely. The tumors had not grown significantly, but they had not shrunk either. The cancer was waiting, patient, cunning. The moment Ruth delivered, the moment the full treatment could begin, would be a race. Could the doctors kill the cancer before the cancer killed Ruth? Labor began at 2:17 in the morning on a Tuesday. 14 hours. Ruth's body, ravaged by months of chemotherapy, barely had the strength to push. Every contraction felt like it might be the last thing her body ever did. Dr. Whitfield stayed the entire time, which was not standard practice for an oncologist, but nothing about Ruth's case was standard. A neonatal team stood by in case the baby showed any effects from the modified chemo. Gloria paced the hallway outside, praying loud enough for the nurses to hear, bargaining with God the way people do when someone they love is behind a closed door and there is nothing they can do but wait. At 4:32 in the afternoon, Ruth's daughter entered the world. 6 pounds, 1 ounce, dark hair, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a scream that filled the delivery room like a church bell announcing something holy. They placed her on Ruth's chest. Ruth looked down at this tiny, perfect, impossible human being, this child who had survived chemotherapy in the womb, who had grown strong while her mother grew weak, who had fought her way into the world against every odd. And she felt something crack open inside her, something that had been sealed shut since the day Jason walked out of that hospital room with a manila envelope and no goodbye. "Grace," Ruth whispered, "your name is Grace, because that is what you are." For 3 days, Ruth lived in a bubble. She held Grace, nursed her, sang to her, soft lullabies that made the nurses pause in the hallway and stand there listening, because there was something in Ruth's voice that was different now. Something that had not been there before the cancer. A rawness, a tenderness so fierce it was almost violent. The sound of a woman who knows that every moment might be the last one and has decided to fill each moment so completely that it could stand on its own forever. She memorized every line of Grace's face, the tiny crease between her eyebrows when she frowned in her sleep, the way her fingers curled around Ruth's thumb, the soft, milky smell of her skin. Ruth memorized all of it because she knew, in the quietest part of her heart, that she might not be here long enough to watch that face change. Then reality returned. Dr. Whitfield, gentle but firm. "Ruth, we need to start the full protocol within 6 weeks. The cancer has been patient, but it will not stay patient much longer. The aggressive immunotherapy protocol, $85,000 minimum. Ruth's bank account, $6,200. 3 weeks after Grace was born. Ruth was in bed, Grace sleeping on her chest, both of them in that warm fog of early motherhood and exhaustion. The phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell. My name is Kevin Calloway. I am an event coordinator working on behalf of Jason Reed. Ruth's blood went cold. She felt it happen, a physical sensation. The warmth draining from her skin as if someone had opened a valve. Mr. Reed is getting married in 6 weeks. He would like you to perform at his wedding reception. Sing one song. He is prepared to offer $10,000. Ruth's response was immediate. No. Absolutely not. I understand your hesitation, Mrs. Mitchell, but I should mention, there is nothing to mention. Tell Jason he can... Mrs. Mitchell. The man's voice changed, became careful, precise, lawyer, precise. I have been asked to remind you of Section 9, Paragraph C, of your divorce agreement, the cooperation clause. Mr. Reed's legal team considers this a reasonable personal request within the scope of that provision. Silence. Ruth could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Grace breathing against her chest. If you decline, Mr. Reed's attorneys are prepared to file a motion to modify the child support arrangement outlined in Section 12, subsection B. Given your current medical and financial circumstances, such a modification could result in a significant reduction, potentially to zero. Ruth could not breathe. The room was tilting. You are telling me that if I do not sing at his wedding, he will take away my baby's child support. I am telling you that Mr. Reed's legal team has advised him of his options under the existing agreement. The choice, of course, is yours. The choice was hers. What a beautiful lie. Ruth was 3 weeks postpartum, bald, in a wheelchair, with $6,200 in the bank, a newborn daughter, stage 3 cancer, and no lawyer. Jason had a team of attorneys and $40 million. The choice was a gun held to her baby's financial survival, and the man holding the gun was smiling. She hung up, held Grace against her chest, and sobbed so hard the baby woke up crying too. And for a minute they cried together, mother and daughter, in that small apartment in Millbrook, and there was nobody else in the world who could help them. Gloria came running from the kitchen. Ruth told her everything. Gloria's face went through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, because she did not understand at first. Comprehension, because the pieces snapped together. Fury, pure and white-hot. Grief, because fury cannot fix everything. And finally, something cold and hard and deliberate, something that looked like the face of a woman who has decided that someone is going to pay for this. That man put a trap in the divorce papers, Gloria said slowly. He planned this. He has been planning this since before the ink was dry. I have to do it, Gloria. If he kills the child support, Grace has nothing. I have nothing. We cannot survive without it. Like hell you have to. We will find a lawyer. We will fight. With what money? With what time? I need to start cancer treatment in 3 weeks. I cannot fight Jason and cancer at the same time. I have to choose. And I choose Grace. Gloria opened her mouth to argue, closed it, because she knew Ruth was right. 2 days later, Ruth called Kevin Calloway back. I will do it. I will sing at the wedding. Pause. Mr. Reed will be pleased. After hanging up, Ruth sat in the dark, Grace asleep in the bassinet beside her, and spoke to the ceiling. Very quiet, very calm, the calm of a woman who has been pushed so far past breaking that she has come out the other side into something new. You think you have won, Jason. You think you have got me cornered. But you just made the biggest mistake of your life. You gave me a microphone. And I still have a voice. For the next 5 weeks, Ruth wrote. She wrote between chemo treatments that left her retching over the toilet while Gloria held Grace in the next room, singing to the baby to cover the sounds of her mother being sick. She wrote between 3 in the morning feedings when Grace woke hungry, and Ruth's body screamed with pain, but she nursed her daughter anyway, because some things matter more than suffering. She wrote between moments of terror so intense she could not breathe, moments when the reality of what she was about to do hit her, and she had to put the pen down and grip the arms of the wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. She filled 3 notebooks, not with lyrics exactly, with truth, raw, unedited, devastating truth. About the meals she skipped so Jason could eat, about the necklace she sold so Jason could file paperwork, about the 3 jobs she worked so Jason could chase his dream while she held down reality. About the first time he looked at her with embarrassment instead of love, that particular shift in his eyes that told her she had become a liability instead of a partner. About signing divorce papers with chemotherapy, poison in her veins, and a baby kicking against her ribs, and no lawyer to tell her she was being robbed. About being told to cooperate or lose her child's support. About being forced to sing at her replacement's wedding while cancer ate her from the inside. All of it. Every wound, every lie, every moment she had swallowed her pain and smiled and said it is fine, and it was never fine. She distilled it all into one song. She called it, I Am Still Here. The structure was simple because the truth does not need complicated arrangements. First verse, what she gave. Second verse, what was taken. Bridge, what she lost. Chorus, what survived. Final verse, what she wanted the world to know about her daughter. Gloria helped her rehearse. They practiced in the apartment with the windows closed, Gloria sitting in the kitchen chair with Grace on her lap, Ruth in the wheelchair with the notebook propped on the armrest. Ruth's voice was thin. The chemo had stolen its richness, stripped the warmth and depth that used to fill the choir loft at Grace Community Church. She cracked on the high notes, wavered on the long phrases. Some nights, she could not get through the first verse without coughing so hard she had to stop and drink water and wait for the spasm to pass. But underneath the weakness, something new had appeared. Something that had not been there before cancer, before betrayal, before Jason. A rawness. A blade, the voice of a woman with absolutely nothing left to lose. There is a sound that only comes from the bottom, and Ruth had found it. And it was more powerful than anything she had ever sung in a choir loft on a Sunday morning when everything was still okay. One night, after Ruth finished a full run-through without stopping, Gloria sat in silence for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for Grace's breathing and the distant sound of someone's television through the wall. Then Gloria said, Ruth, that song is going to destroy that man. That is the idea. No, baby, I mean it is going to destroy him. Are you ready for what happens after? Ruth looked at Grace, sleeping in the bassinet. 5 weeks old, dark hair, Ruth's eyes. Whatever happens after is better than what is happening now. The contract Jason's team sent was specific. Ruth would perform one song, approximately 4 minutes, during the reception. The song had to be, and this is a direct quote, appropriate for a wedding celebration. She would be introduced by Jason personally. She would not make any statements beyond the performance. Ruth signed the contract. She had absolutely no intention of honoring the appropriate for a wedding celebration clause. What was Jason going to do? Sue a dying woman for singing the wrong song? Let him try. By the time any court heard the case, Ruth would either be deep in cancer treatment or dead. Either way, she was beyond his reach. He had taken everything from her, and in doing so, he had freed her. You cannot threaten someone who has nothing left to lose. The night before the wedding, Ruth knelt beside Grace's crib. Her knees screamed in protest and her bones ached, and her body begged her to stop. But she stayed on her knees because some conversations need to happen that way. She prayed. Not for victory, not for revenge, not even for justice, because justice felt too large and too complicated for a prayer. Lord, I am not asking you to fix this. I am asking you to hold me up long enough to tell the truth. After that, I am yours. She kissed Grace goodnight, pressed her lips against that soft dark hair, and breathed in the smell of baby shampoo and milk and something else. Something that was just Grace. A smell Ruth would have recognized in a room of 1,000 babies. Then she sat in her wheelchair and ran through the song one final time. Every word sharp, every line loaded, every verse a nail in the coffin of Jason Reed's carefully constructed image. Tomorrow, he would give her a stage, and she would use it to tear his world apart. November 15th, cold, gray, the kind of sky that could not decide between rain and nothing. Getting Ruth ready took 2 hours. Her body resisted every step of the process, as if it knew where she was going and was trying to protect her by refusing to cooperate. Gloria helped her bathe, moving carefully around the port in Ruth's chest where the chemo went in. The bruises on her arms from blood draws, the bones that jutted out in places where muscle used to be. They chose the black dress they had found at Goodwill for $6. It hung off Ruth's frame because she had lost more weight since buying it. Gloria pinned it in the back with safety pins so it would not look like a shroud. She wrapped Ruth's head in a scarf. Deep green, the color of life, because Gloria said she was not going to let Ruth walk into that room looking like death, even if death was exactly what she was staring down. Grace was 5 weeks old, too young for this. Linda Beckett. Ruth's friend from the school cafeteria came to the apartment to babysit. Ruth nursed Grace one last time, pressing her lips against her daughter's forehead for so long that Linda had to gently remind her they needed to leave. "I will be back," Ruth whispered to Grace. "Mama promises." Marcus drove them to the Grand Riviera Hotel in his van, the only vehicle that could fit the wheelchair. They did not enter through the front entrance, where guests were arriving in designer gowns and stepping out of cars that cost more than Ruth's apartment. They entered through the service entrance. Concrete hallways, fluorescent lights, the route the help uses, the route the invisible people use. A young coordinator with a headset led them to a small green room backstage. The coordinator had a professional smile and eyes that flickered with barely concealed horror when she saw Ruth. She recovered quickly, but Ruth saw it. Ruth saw everything now. When you are dying, you notice things healthy people miss because you have stopped wasting energy on pretending. "The ceremony concludes at 2:30, the coordinator said. "You will perform at 3:15, approximately 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 12 years of truth, compressed into 4 minutes. At 2:45, a knock on the door. Jason Reed walked in looking like he had been assembled by a team of professionals, which he had. Custom black tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. Perfect hair. Skin glowing from spa treatments and expensive moisturizer. He smelled like cologne that came in bottles shaped like architecture. He looked like a magazine cover. He looked like everything money can buy when money is the only thing you have. He looked at Ruth, bald, skeletal, wheelchair, Goodwill dress with safety pins in the back, and he smiled. The same smile she had seen in Forbes magazine, the performance smile, the one he wore for cameras and investors and anyone he wanted something from. "Ruth, you came." Gloria stood up. Jason's eyes did not even register her. Gloria, who had fed him mashed potatoes at a church potluck when he was hungry. Gloria, who had stood as witness at their wedding. Gloria, who had held Ruth through every nightmare his ambition had created. Invisible. Just like Ruth. "Give us a moment," Jason said. "No," Gloria said. "It is okay," Ruth said. "1 minute, Gloria." Gloria left the door cracked open, a crack wide enough to hear everything and intervene if she needed to. Jason perched on the arm of the couch, looking down at Ruth with what he probably thought was warmth. It was assessment, the way a director looks at a prop to make sure it is positioned correctly for the camera. "I want to thank you for being here," he said. "Serena, my fiancée. She is very passionate about charitable causes. Having you here, performing, it shows that we have moved beyond everything. It is a gesture of grace. It is a gesture of your lawyer, threatening to cut my baby's child support if I did not show up." Jason's smile did not waver. "Let us not make this ugly, Ruth." "You made it ugly, Jason. I am just standing in the mess you made." "Sitting," he corrected, then caught himself. Almost apologized. She saw the apology form somewhere behind his eyes, and she watched him decide not to deliver it, the same way she had watched him kill the joy in his eyes when he saw the yellow baby shoes. "Look, the media is covering this. Serena's father has connections at 3 networks. When you go out there, I need you to smile. Say something gracious about how happy you are for me. Sing something uplifting. Make it inspirational." He straightened his cufflinks, headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Ruth, try to look less. You know, it is a wedding. People want to see joy." He left. Ruth sat perfectly still for 10 seconds, breathing, counting, controlling the rage that was trying to eat through her chest. Then she opened her notebook and picked up her pen. Gloria came back in. "What are you doing?" Adding a verse. "About Grace." "What about her?" Ruth looked up. Her eyes were dry, her hands were steady. The rage had burned away, everything soft, leaving something diamond hard underneath. "He has never held her, never asked her name, never acknowledged she exists. I am going to make sure 300 people and every camera in that room know exactly what kind of father abandoned his newborn daughter." Gloria stared at her for a long moment. Then she sat down and said, "Make it hurt." 3:12 in the afternoon. The coordinator returned. "Mrs. Mitchell, you are on." Gloria wheeled Ruth to the stage entrance. Through the curtain came the sounds of celebration, music, laughter. Crystal clinking, 300 voices layered over each other in the particular hum of wealth celebrating itself. The sound of people who have never missed a meal, toasting to a future they assume will continue being kind to them. Jason's voice came over the microphone, amplified and smooth. The voice of a man who had spent years learning how to control rooms. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, a very special moment. Someone who was part of my journey. My ex-wife, Ruth Mitchell, part of his journey. Like she was a rest stop on his highway, like she was a footnote in his autobiography. Part of my journey, 12 years of her life, and she was part of his journey." Curious applause, the kind people give when they are not sure what they are clapping for. Polite, tentative, uncertain. The curtain parted. Gloria wheeled Ruth out. The lights hit first. Hot, white, blinding. The kind of stage lights that expose everything and forgive nothing. Ruth blinked, and the ballroom materialized in fragments. Designer gowns, tuxedos, crystal chandeliers throwing rainbows across the ceiling. Flower arrangements on every table that cost more than Ruth's monthly rent. Cameras everywhere. Professional equipment for the wedding video, and dozens of phones already raised and recording. At the head table, elevated above the rest of the room, sat Jason and Serena Whitmore. Serena was late 20s, stunning, the kind of beautiful that makes other people feel inadequate, just by existing. Wedding dress that looked like it had been spun from light and money, diamonds at her throat. She looked like everything Ruth used to be before 12 years of sacrifice had hollowed her out. Jason had his arm around his bride, beaming. He caught Ruth's eye across the room and gave a small, satisfied nod, the nod of a man watching his plan come together. The room fell silent. 300 people stared at this bald, skeletal woman in a wheelchair. The whispering started immediately, the way it always does when people see something that makes them uncomfortable but cannot look away. Is that really his ex-wife? God, she looks terrible. This is uncomfortable. Why would he do this? Ruth gripped the microphone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was slamming against her ribs so hard she was afraid it would stop. The lights were blinding, and the room was too big, and 300 faces were staring at her, and every single instinct in her body was screaming at her to turn around and wheel back through that curtain and disappear. But Grace's face flashed in her mind. 5 weeks old, sleeping in the bassinet, depending on a mother who had promised never to stop fighting. Ruth spoke, voice thin but clear. The microphone carried it to every corner of that enormous room. I was his wife for 12 years. I built his foundation. I carried his child. And I am still here, the piano began, a simple accompaniment that the pianist had learned from Ruth's sheet music, a melody so spare and honest it sounded like a prayer. Ruth sang. The first verse was quiet, almost fragile, like something that might break if you touched it too hard. She sang about working 3 jobs while he chased his dream, about selling her grandmother's jewelry so he could file a business license, about believing in him when every door in the city slammed in his face, about ironing his suits and keeping his plate warm and praying over his shoulders every morning because she believed that was what love was supposed to do. The room shifted. People stopped whispering. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Champagne glasses hovered in midair, untouched. Something was happening that nobody had expected, least of all Jason, who had anticipated a sweet, soft song from a broken woman. What he was getting was testimony. The second verse grew sharper, harder. The fragility burned away, and underneath it was steel. Ruth sang about the sickness arriving while his baby grew inside her, about him sleeping in hotels while she slept in hospital beds, about the diagnosis she received alone because he was at a gala with another woman, about the phone calls he did not answer, about the ultrasound photo he did not look at, about the yellow baby shoes and the half-second of joy he killed with his own hands. Gasps spread table by table across the ballroom like a wave. A woman pressed her hand to her mouth. A man set down his champagne glass very slowly, as if sudden movements might shatter something. The comfortable warmth of celebration gave way to something electric and dangerous, the charged feeling in the air before a storm breaks. Then the chorus, Ruth's voice cracking, but refusing to break. He left when my hair fell, but heaven stayed when he ran. My body broke, but my soul stood up. And I am still here, the bridge. This was where Ruth looked directly at Jason. Not at the room, not at the cameras, at him. Her eyes found his across the ballroom and locked on with the precision of someone who has practiced this moment in her mind 1,000 times. She did not just sing, she spoke. She told 300 people and every camera in that room about Grace, about the daughter Jason had never held, never named, never asked about the 5-week-old baby sleeping in a 1-bedroom apartment in Millbrook right now, while her mother sat in a wheelchair at the wedding of the father who pretended she did not exist. She told them about the clause, the cooperation provision, the legal leash, The threat to cut child support if she refused to perform. She told them that she was not there because she wanted to be. She was there because the father of her child had found a way to force his dying, pregnant ex-wife onto a stage at his wedding, and he thought she would sing something sweet, and he thought she would make him look generous, and he thought she had nothing left. But she had her voice, and the truth. Jason stood. That is enough. The pianist kept playing, Ruth kept singing. The final lines came raw and ragged and absolutely unbreakable. About a woman who sold everything she had so a man could stand tall. And when he was tall enough to see over the crowd, he looked right past her. About a woman who carried his child while he carried his pride. About a woman who was forced onto this stage because he put a clause in divorce papers to control her even after he threw her away. And she is still here. I said that is enough. Jason moved toward the stage. 2 steps. 3. His face had gone from white to red, the color rising up his neck and flooding his cheeks, the mask finally cracking, the real Jason emerging from behind the $12,000 tuxedo and the Forbes smile. And then a voice from the head table stopped him cold. Sit down, Serena. The room froze. 300 people suspended in the same breath. The last piano note faded and died, and what replaced it was silence so complete you could hear the ice melting in 300 glasses. Serena Whitmore sat at the head table, perfectly still. Mascara tracking down her face in 2 dark lines. Hands flat on the table. In front of her, palms down, fingers spread, the way you brace yourself when the ground starts shaking. She was not crying the way women cry in movies, beautifully, delicately, with a single photogenic tear. She was crying the way people cry when their entire understanding of reality has just been rearranged. She did not move immediately, did not jump up, did not make a scene. She just looked at Jason with an expression that was more devastating than any scream could ever be. The look of someone doing math in their head and watching every equation come up wrong. The look of someone who has just realized that the man she married an hour ago is not the man she thought he was. Then she spoke. Quiet. Not for the crowd, for Jason. Is it true? Serena, this is not the time. Yes or no? Did you divorce her while she was pregnant and had cancer? The situation was complicated. Yes or no? She is twisting everything. She agreed to? Did you put a clause in your divorce papers to force your dying ex-wife to sing at our wedding? Yes or no? The room held its breath. Jason opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. He stood there in his $12,000 tuxedo with 300 people staring at him and cameras recording from every angle, and he could not produce a single word because there was no word in the English language that could save him. His silence was the loudest sound Ruth had ever heard. Serena stood slowly. She reached down and removed her engagement ring, a diamond so large it caught the light from the chandeliers and threw little rainbows across the tablecloth. Then her wedding band. She did not throw them. She placed them on the table in front of Jason's plate, carefully, precisely, the way you set down something that no longer belongs to you. Then she walked toward the stage, heels clicking on marble, every eye in the room following her. She climbed the stairs, crossed to Ruth's wheelchair, and did something nobody in that room expected. She knelt on the marble floor, in her wedding dress, on her wedding day. I did not know, she whispered. The microphone caught it, carried it to every corner of the ballroom. He told me you had grown apart. He said inviting you was a gesture of goodwill. I did not know any of this. Ruth looked at this woman, this young, beautiful woman, who was also, in her own way, a victim of Jason Reed's performance. A different kind of victim, yes, not robbed of her health or her money or her grandmother's necklace, but robbed of the truth. fed the same lies Ruth had been fed 12 years ago, just wrapped in more expensive packaging. Ruth nodded. She believed Serena. She knew what Jason's lies looked like from the inside. Serena stood, turned to face the crowd. Her voice shook but did not break. There is no wedding. I cannot marry a man who did this. Then she walked off the stage, down the stairs, through the ballroom, past 300 people who parted for her like water. Out the door. She did not run. She walked with the deliberate, measured steps of a woman who was holding herself together through sheer force of will and would allow herself to fall apart later, in private, where nobody could watch. She did not look back at Jason, not once. Jason stood at the head table, alone. His groomsmen had stepped away from him. His own mother was staring at her plate. The wedding planner had vanished. The photographer had lowered her camera, unsure if she was supposed to document this or pretend it was not happening. 300 phones were recording. The live stream that Jason had set up to broadcast his perfect day to thousands of viewers was broadcasting his destruction instead. His perfect image, his self-made mogul mythology, his magazine cover life, all of it dissolving in real time in front of an audience that was only going to grow. And Ruth sat in her wheelchair on the stage, trembling, crying, more exhausted than she had ever been in her life, thinking only one thing: I need to get home to Grace. What happened in the 48 hours after Jason Reed's wedding was not a news cycle. It was a detonation. The video exploded, not gradually, the way things usually go viral, building momentum over days as algorithms catch up. This was immediate. 8 million views in 24 hours. Every major outlet picked it up. Television, newspapers, websites, social media. The story had everything the internet craves: a villain, a victim, a dramatic reversal, and a moment of justice so cathartic that people watched it over and over, sharing it with the same breathless urgency you use when you grab someone's arm and say you have to see this. The headlines wrote themselves. Dying mother, forced to sing at ex-husband's wedding. What happened next shocked everyone. Ex-wife's song destroys groom's wedding in real time. The woman who turned her pain into the most powerful song you will ever hear. Serena Whitmore, from the back seat of a car, still wearing her wedding dress, the mascara stains still on her face, posted to her 2 million social media followers a photo of Ruth on stage, and one sentence: this woman built his empire, and he tried to bury her. Help me fix this. The link was to a fundraising page Serena had created during the drive home. The money came in waves, each one driven by a different catalyst. First, the wedding guests themselves. People who had been in that room, who had seen Ruth's face, who had heard her voice crack and keep going. $47,000 in the first 3 hours from people wealthy enough to write 4-figure checks without thinking. Second, the viral spread, social media shares, news coverage, the story catching fire across every platform. $200,000 by the end of the first day. Regular people donating $10, $20, $50 each. Small amounts that added up to something enormous. Third, a well-known daytime television host shared the video with a personal message about her own mother's cancer battle. $400,000 by day, too. Fourth, a regional healthcare corporation offered to cover the remainder of Ruth's treatment costs directly outside the fundraising campaign. Their public relations department saw the opportunity, yes, but the offer was real. Total raised, $1.1 million. Enough for treatment and then some. Not lottery money, not fantasy money. Real money, earned by real suffering. Ruth, back in her apartment, holding Grace, watched the numbers climb on Gloria's phone. She did not quite believe it. After a year of watching numbers go in only one direction, down, this felt like a hallucination, like one of the fever dreams the chemo gave her. Dr. Whitfield called to say a full medical team was being assembled. Dr. Patricia Alderman, an oncologist at City General who had seen the video and been moved by it, volunteered to lead the treatment protocol. Dr. Alderman was brilliant and direct and had a reputation for fighting cancer the way some people fight wars, with total commitment and no tolerance for retreat. For the first time in over a year, Ruth allowed herself to breathe, a real breath, the kind that fills your lungs all the way instead of stopping short because your body is braced for the next blow. "We are going to be okay," she whispered to Grace, rocking her gently. "Mama is going to fight this, and we are going to be okay." Gloria made tea. Pastor David came by with flowers from the congregation. Cards arrived from strangers, people who had seen the video and felt compelled to write to a woman they had never met. The apartment felt warm for the first time since Ruth had moved in. Not just heated, warm. The kind of warm that comes from people caring about you. 5 beautiful days of believing the worst was over. Then Dr. Alderman walked into Ruth's hospital room with new scan results and an expression that Ruth recognized instantly. The face doctors make when they have to destroy hope. The face that says, "I wish I did not have to tell you this, but I do. And no amount of kindness will make it hurt less." Ruth, the full body scans show something the earlier imaging missed. The cancer has metastasized to your liver. 3 distinct lesions. The warm feeling in Ruth's chest turned to ice. She felt it happen, the same draining sensation she had felt when Kevin Calloway's voice came through the phone. The modified chemo during pregnancy held the primary tumors in check, but it was not strong enough to prevent the liver spread. We are now dealing with stage 4 with hepatic metastasis. What does that mean for treatment? It means we need to be significantly more aggressive. Immunotherapy combined with targeted radiation and possible surgical resection. It is harder, more painful, and the timeline is longer. What are my chances? Long pause. Dr. Alderman took Ruth's hand. She was not the kind of doctor who usually held patients' hands. She was the kind of doctor who delivered facts and let patients process them in their own way. The fact that she reached for Ruth's hand told Ruth everything the words had not. "I will not give you a number, Ruth. Numbers lie. Some patients with your staging live for decades. Some do not make it through treatment. What I can give you is a fight. The best fight modern medicine has to offer. But I need you to know it is going to be the hardest thing you have ever done. Harder than singing at my ex-husband's wedding while 5 weeks postpartum." A ghost of a smile from Dr. Alderman. "Medically speaking, yes. Much harder. One more thing," the doctor continued. "The treatment protocol is intensive. There will be weeks, possibly months, when you physically cannot care for Grace. You will need full-time support." Ruth looked at Gloria. Gloria looked back, and Ruth saw what Gloria was trying to hide behind those steady brown eyes. The fear, the exhaustion, the knowledge that she was already running on fumes, and this was asking her to run a marathon. Caring for Ruth and a newborn through months of brutal treatment might break her. "I am not going anywhere," Gloria said firmly. Ruth heard what Gloria said. She also heard what Gloria did not say, which was, "I do not know if I can do this, but I am going to do it anyway, because that is what love does." Week 2 of the aggressive protocol. The immunotherapy was supposed to teach Ruth's immune system to recognize and attack the cancer cells. Instead, it triggered a cytokine storm, a catastrophic overreaction where the immune system already battered by months of modified chemo, went into overdrive. Ruth's body began attacking itself. The nurses noticed it first. Ruth's temperature spiked to 101, then 102, then 104.7 in the span of 3 hours. Her blood pressure crashed. Her organs began showing distress, one after another, like dominoes falling. Monitors screamed. Alarms filled the room with that particular sound that means something is going very wrong, very fast. Crash cart at the bedside. Dr. Alderman paged from the surgical floor. The medical team converging on Ruth's room with the controlled urgency of people trained to fight death without panicking. For 6 hours they fought. Ruth was semi-conscious, delirious with fever. She called for Grace, called for her grandmother. At one point, she called for Jason. Not the Jason who existed now, the cold man in the tuxedo who had looked at her like she was a prop. She called for the Jason from 12 years ago, the one who used to hold her face and make promises in a kitchen above a laundromat. The ghost of a man who had never really existed at all. Her heart stopped for 47 seconds. 47 seconds, less than a minute, more than enough time to die. The room went into controlled chaos. Dr. Alderman with the paddles, the team working in synchronized urgency. Code Blue announced over the intercom. People running in the hallways, they brought her back. Ruth survived, but the cytokine storm had damaged her kidneys. She now needed dialysis 3 times a week on top of the cancer treatment, which meant 3 more trips to the hospital, 3 more sessions hooked up to machines, 3 more opportunities for things to go wrong. Gloria sat in the hallway outside the intensive care unit, holding Grace, rocking her back and forth, singing the Sparrow hymn through her tears. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. She had sung it so many times in the last year that the words had worn smooth, like river stones, and she sang them now not because she believed them, but because they were all she had. This is where the dominoes connected. This is where each catastrophe reached back and caused the next one, a chain of destruction as deliberate and mechanical as a machine. Jason Reed, watching his empire crumble in the wake of the wedding video, did what cornered narcissists do. He attacked the person who could not fight back. His investors pulled out first. Gerald Thornton, who had been Jason's earliest and biggest supporter, held a press conference announcing the dissolution of their partnership. Then the board removed Jason as CEO of his own company. Then the stock price collapsed. Then the magazine profiles and the charity invitations and the networking dinners all dried up one by one, until Jason was alone in a penthouse he could no longer afford, watching his $40 million life disintegrate on the same screens that had once celebrated it. And instead of looking inward, instead of sitting with the wreckage of his choices, Jason looked outward for someone to hurt. He found the easiest target available, the one who was lying in an intensive care unit, too weak to fight back. His lawyer, Mitchell Cross, filed an emergency petition for temporary custody of Grace. The petition argued, in cold legal language, that the child's mother is currently on life support in the intensive care unit, unable to provide any form of parental care. The child is being cared for by an unrelated individual with no legal guardianship authority. The child's welfare is at immediate risk. Every word was technically true, and every word was designed to destroy Ruth. The process server arrived at Gloria's house while Gloria was changing Grace's diaper. Gloria read the papers standing in her living room with the baby on her hip. She put Grace in the crib, walked into the bathroom, and threw up. Then she pulled herself together, because that is what Gloria Jackson did. She called Pastor David, who called Margaret Sullivan, a family law attorney from the congregation who had been following Ruth's story and had been waiting for a chance to help. Margaret took the case pro bono and immediately began assembling documentation. But the hearing was scheduled for 10 days out, and until then, the legal uncertainty hung over everything like a blade. Ruth, still recovering from the cytokine storm, barely conscious, was told about the custody petition by Gloria, who had tried to wait, tried to let Ruth recover enough to handle it, but could not. Ruth kept asking why Gloria looked like she had been crying, and Gloria was a terrible liar, and eventually, the truth came out the way truth always does. Ruth's reaction was primal, not anger, not panic, something deeper and more animal than either of those. The sound the nurses heard from her room was later described by a veteran ICU nurse with 22 years of experience as the worst thing I have heard in my career, not a scream, something that came from a place beyond screaming. The sound of a mother being told that someone wants to take her child. Her blood pressure spiked to dangerous levels. Her kidney function deteriorated. The machines screamed their alarms and the nurses rushed in, and Dr. Alderman was paged for the second time in 4 days. "This man is going to kill her faster than the cancer," Dr. Alderman told Gloria, privately in the hallway, with the door closed and their voices low. "Her body cannot handle this stress. If we do not get her stabilized, the treatment will not matter. You know that feeling. Maybe not this exact situation, but you know it. That moment when the world breaks its promise to you. When you do everything right, you fight as hard as you can, you sacrifice everything, and the universe punches you in the face anyway. When you are already on the ground and life decides to kick you. Everyone has a version of that moment. The details are different, but the feeling is the same. That helpless, breathless, how much more can one person take feeling that makes you want to lie down and never get up. The stress from the custody battle did exactly what Dr. Alderman feared. Ruth's immune system, already devastated by the chemotherapy and the cytokine storm, collapsed completely. Her white blood cell count dropped to almost nothing. She had no defenses left, no army, no walls. Nothing between her and every microscopic threat in a hospital that was, despite its best efforts, crawling with bacteria. A routine IV change, a microscopic amount of bacteria on a needle or a tube or a nurse's glove. Under normal circumstances, Ruth's body would have fought it off without her even knowing, a minor skirmish that her immune system would have won in its sleep. Instead, sepsis. Her temperature hit 105, blood pressure crashing, transfer back to the intensive care unit, ventilator breathing for her because her lungs could not do it alone. IV antibiotics pumping through veins that were running out of viable access points because the chemo and the dialysis and the cytokine storm had collapsed, vein after vein. For 5 days, Ruth drifted between consciousness and delirium. When she was aware, she asked for grace. When she was not aware, she sang, mumbled fragments of hymns, half-formed melodies, words that did not connect but carried the rhythm of the songs her grandmother had taught her. The nurses said it was the eeriest and most beautiful thing they had ever witnessed. A dying woman singing in her sleep, fighting for life with the only weapon she had ever truly possessed. Gloria brought grace to the ICU window every single day. The nurses, who had long since stopped pretending this was a normal case, bent every rule they could. They let Gloria hold Grace up to the glass during Ruth's lucid moments. Ruth would see her daughter's face through the glass and press her palm against the window. Grace, too young to understand why she could not touch her mother, would press her tiny hand against the other side. Almost touching, not quite, separated by glass and machines, and the terrible, invisible war being waged inside Ruth's body. On day 5, the antibiotics won. The sepsis retreated. Ruth was transferred back to her regular room, but the damage was catastrophic. She had lost 14 pounds she could not afford to lose. Her kidney function had worsened. 2 weeks of cancer treatment had been lost. 2 weeks the cancer had used to regroup and dig in. Dr. Alderman delivered the assessment. Ruth, we have to restart the protocol from zero. The interruption means we have lost everything we built, and your body is significantly weaker than when we started. Can I survive a second round? Long pause. Too long. The kind of pause that contains its own answer. I do not know, but I know you cannot survive without one. The cytokine storm weakened Ruth. Jason used her ICU stay to attack custody. The stress of the custody battle destroyed her immune system. The destroyed immune system opened the door for sepsis. Each catastrophe caused the next. Each one brought Ruth closer to a point where giving up would have been the rational choice. But Ruth was not rational. Ruth was a mother. The custody hearing happened while Ruth was still recovering from sepsis. Margaret Sullivan demolished Jason's petition with the systematic precision of a woman who had spent 2 weeks preparing for this exact fight. She presented Jason's voluntary relinquishment during the divorce. His documented absence during Ruth's pregnancy, his failure to ever meet or acknowledge Grace, his failure to attend a single prenatal appointment or ask a single question about his daughter's health. Testimony from Gloria. Testimony from Dr. Whitfield. Testimony from Pastor David. Testimony from 3 nurses who described in detail the conditions under which Ruth had signed the original divorce papers. The judge dismissed the petition with prejudice and added a note to the record calling Jason's filing a transparent attempt to weaponize the family court system against a critically ill mother. Jason lost his last weapon 3 months of treatment. The second round of the protocol started from zero with a body that was weaker and a cancer that was stronger and odds that were worse than before. 3 months of poisons designed to save Ruth by nearly killing her. 3 months of nausea and pain and exhaustion so deep that some mornings Ruth could not remember her own name. But slowly, something began to change. The liver lesions shrank, first by millimeters, then by centimeters. Her blood markers improved. The tumor in her remaining ovary reduced. Dr. Alderman's vocabulary began to shift, responding, progressing, and then cautiously, with the measured optimism of a scientist who has been burned by false hope too many times. Remission. Grace was growing, 5 months old, babbling in that incoherent, joyful language babies invent, reaching for everything she could see, pulling herself up on furniture, beginning to recognize Ruth's face with the explosive joy that only babies can produce, that full body, arms flailing, scream-laughing recognition that says you are mine, you are here. Ruth was weaker than she had been before cancer, thinner, still bald, still in the wheelchair most days, but alive, fighting, present. 5 months after the wedding, Dr. Alderman called Ruth into her office. Your latest scans are clean. All of them. The liver lesions are resolved. The lymph nodes are clear. Your blood markers are normal. Ruth did not react. She had learned not to trust good news. Good news in her life had a habit of arriving with a trapdoor underneath it. Ruth, you are in complete remission. The cancer is gone. Gloria screamed, a full-volume, hallelujah, hand-clapping, foot-stomping scream that echoed through the oncology department and made 3 nurses come running. Ruth did not scream. She sat very still, holding Grace on her lap, and said, "Are you sure? I have run the tests 3 times. Run them again." Dr. Alderman smiled through tears. "I already ran them a 4th time. You are cancer-free, Ruth." Then Ruth broke. She pulled Grace against her chest and sobbed. the good kind of crying, the kind that washes months and months of terror out of your body like a flood carrying away debris. Gloria wrapped herself around both of them. The three of them, in that sterile hospital office, held each other and cried until they were empty. Ruth was invited to appear on a national talk show. She accepted. She flew to Los Angeles with Gloria and Grace. She sat on a brightly lit stage and told her story to millions of people and held her daughter up for the audience, and they gave her a standing ovation. She announced the creation of the Ruth Mitchell Foundation, dedicated to helping women fighting cancer during domestic crisis. She smiled. She breathed. She believed. For the first time since that October night 12 years ago, when she served mashed potatoes to a hungry man with blue eyes, Ruth Mitchell believed that the worst was behind her. The night before flying home, hotel room, the nicest room Ruth had ever stayed in, paid for by the show's producers. Clean white sheets and a bathtub big enough to swim in, and a view of the city that looked like a galaxy laid flat. Ruth was giving Grace a bath. The baby was splashing and laughing and trying to eat the bubbles. Ruth lifted her out of the water, wrapping her in a white towel, and felt something. Pain. Lower back, sharp, deep, like a knife sliding between her vertebrae. She told herself it was nothing. Travel fatigue, stress, sleeping on an unfamiliar mattress, any of the dozen explanations that the human mind produces when it does not want to face what it already knows. It was not nothing. Back home, Dr. Alderman ordered scans immediately. Ruth lay in the machine and closed her eyes and listened to the rhythmic clunking and tried not to think about Grace and what Grace would do without her, and how Gloria was 60 years old and could not raise a toddler alone, and how unfair it all was. The results came back in 2 days. The cancer is back, Dr. Alderman said. It is in your spine. Ruth sat in the doctor's office and felt the floor disappear beneath her. For the third time, she was getting familiar with that feeling, the stomach-dropping, ground-vanishing sensation of having everything you believed ripped away in a sentence. But you said remission. It was remission. But the cancer has mutated. It found a new pathway that the immunotherapy does not recognize. This is a new fight, Ruth. What do we do? There is an experimental trial at Johns Hopkins. Gene therapy combined with modified immunotherapy. It is new, barely out of phase 2. But for your specific mutation, it is the best option we have. What are the chances? I will not give you a number. Please. Some patients have responded remarkably. Others have not. That is the honest truth. What does it require? 4 months in Baltimore. You will be hospitalized for most of it. The side effects are severe. 4 months away from Grace. Yes. Ruth looked at her daughter. 8 months old, sitting on Gloria's lap, chewing on a rubber giraffe, completely unaware that the world was ending again. If I do not do this, 12 to 18 months? If I do it and it works, years, possibly a full life. The gene therapy reprograms your immune system to fight this specific mutation. If it works, your body becomes its own defense. Ruth closed her eyes. Every time she thought she had reached the bottom, the floor opened again and there was another level beneath it, darker and colder than the one before. I have to leave my daughter for 4 months on the chance, not the certainty, the chance that I will live long enough to watch her grow up. Yes. Or I can stay, hold her every day for a year, and then she loses me forever. Yes. Ruth opened her eyes, looked at Grace. I will go. The night before Ruth left for Baltimore, she held Grace all night, did not sleep, did not try. She sat in the rocking chair Gloria had bought at a yard sale, and she held her daughter against her chest and she memorized everything. The weight, the warmth, the rhythm of breathing, the way Grace's fingers curled around Ruth's thumb even in sleep, holding on with the instinctive grip of someone who does not yet know that the world takes things away. She memorized the smell, that particular combination of baby shampoo and milk and skin that scientists say triggers the most powerful bonding hormones the human body can produce. She memorized the sound of Grace breathing, the tiny sighs and snuffles, and occasional murmurs that meant her daughter was dreaming about something. And Ruth wondered what babies dream about, and she hoped it was warmth and light and the sound of singing. She recorded a video, not for the internet, not for the foundation, not for the talk shows, for Grace. In case Ruth did not come back, my sweet girl. If you are watching this, it means Mama did not make it home, and I need you to know something. Leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did. Harder than the cancer, harder than the chemo, harder than anything your father ever did to me. But I left because staying meant giving up.